Commonwealth Games to talk now, and Steve Robilliard joins us. Very experienced sports journo out of Oz. Steve, news yesterday, and I don't know whether it's any great shake or surprise from where you are, but it just seemed kind of inevitable. The Gold Coast pulled out, and this is on the back of Melbourne pulling out, and that's on the back of Durban pulling out, and now we get Alberta in 2030. This is the death knell for the Commonwealth Games, isn't it?
Well, I hope it's not, but it feels like it, doesn't it? Like a lot of countries, and maybe New Zealand, Australia's kind of swimming in debt at the moment, and to suddenly try and stump up for another big Games when Queensland is really focused on the Olympics in, 32, look, it's not a surprise. But, you know, I've been lucky enough to go to the last 8 Commonwealth Games, and I went to Birmingham last year and came away so optimistic about the future of the Games because they did a fantastic job. And it was really well supported and attended, and the people of Birmingham were right behind it, and it just felt like, you know, it was all back to where it should be, and a great Games was had. And then, you know, as we know, Dan Andrews, the Premier of Victoria, pulled the pin on Victoria a few months ago, and they go, oh, what's happened? And it's very difficult for any city, 3 years out, less than 3 years now, to find the venues and the money and make it happen. So it's hard to see if it's going to be held on time, if it's held at all.
When you say that, though, I mean, my mind just starts ticking and going, look, how many places around the world within the Commonwealth where there are the facilities already? There's no sense and sensibility here where somebody can say, listen, let's not overexpend, you know, and try and build something that's actually not there, and let's actually look at what we already have in place somewhere.
What I guess it was thought of and ruled out for some reason, but when it first happened that Victoria pulled out, national embarrassment. Can I just say that I'm as ashamed as anybody that it's us that's pulled the pin on it. But my first reaction was, well, okay, Victoria's going to have to pay some compensation. I think they stumped up about 280, 300 million to the Commonwealth Games Association. Okay, so there's money in the kitty. Can you not go back to Birmingham and say, look, you did such a great job, we're in a hole, could you host it again? But I guess they didn't have the appetite for it, or it's not just whether the venues exist, it's whether they're available, because they get booked out for big events years in advance. And I think that's as much a problem as any of the multiple other ones.
Is it possible to actually, and I've always been a great advocate of this for the Olympics, again, just to stop the extravagance that is trying to build everything and host this, that you just pick a place and go, okay, that's its spiritual home, just have it there.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the recent history, say, you know, Delhi hosted it in 2010, so it did go to India, and to be brutally fair, they didn't do a great job. They damaged the brand. But in 2014, it went to Glasgow, and they did a great job. And since then, I felt it's rolled along okay. It went to the Gold Coast and then Birmingham. I would be quite happy if England, as the kind of sentimental core of the Commonwealth, did host it permanently, because the other nations are just not putting their hand up. Like as you've mentioned, Canada and South Africa in recent times have both pulled the pin on possible bids, and it only ended up in Birmingham because Durban did pull out. So if South Africa and Canada aren't interested, that financially leaves it recently Australia and the UK as places where it could be. And I would be in favour of it being in Birmingham. They did such a great job. If they were up for it, I wouldn't mind if it was in one place, because the African countries, they're not up for it, and neither is the Caribbean. We've got a very limited number of countries that are willing to do it at all.
On a political level, Steve, the Commonwealth Games and the very reasons behind why it was first formed, we have this philosophical debate in New Zealand all the time about colonisation and so forth. Is it kind of just done its time because of that?
Yeah, look, I hear those arguments, and some of them are really quite strong and hard to push back against. The thing is, when you're in the middle of it, like once every 4 years, there's this great feeling around it when you're actually there. But I don't know whether those bonds, those ties, those feelings extend beyond those few weeks.
Yeah, right.
But what I was doing the gymnastics, as I generally do at these games, and my co-commentator, Liz Chetkovich, and I was sort of reflecting on the games at one point and the different feeling it has to the Olympics, where everything is so intense and where winning matters so much, that there's a different feeling. There's not the fear of failure at the Commonwealth Games. It's a more genuine sporting experience in that, I don't know, people are there to participate, meet other people, have some kind of cultural exchange, and not be afraid if they don't win. It's more about participation, and I kind of like what that meant, and because I do both, and I kind of think the feeling around the Commonwealth Games is different and refreshing in a way. If you're an old style bit of a purist, like I think I can brand myself as, I quite like the feeling around it, but that I don't know that carries a lot of weight against some of the political and other arguments against it.
Well, I suppose when you introduce the political stuff into it, it's about evolving, isn't it? And it's about where society is now, and is there a place for something like that? But when you actually just break it down to what it actually is, it's a whole lot of people who are striving to win something for their country, and the feel-good factor that results in. And like last year, I mean, we were all celebrating, guys winning and girls winning medals on the track, winning medals at different other things. We on not just the cycling track, but actually in the arena as well. Winning at swimming, winning at things that. There are some athletes that this is the peak of their level, and to represent their country at something in an international event and win something. Every politician in the place was slavering like lizards crawling under a rock when they came back with their medals, wanting photos, wanting flags, all of that kind of stuff. And so, again, you can't buy that intangible and what that actually does to lift the mood of people and how good it makes people feel. And so, you're trying to balance all of this out, and at the moment it just seems to keep coming back to dollars and cents. And I just kind of think, is that if we have determine everything by that, Steve, well, what do we have left? Because ultimately the bean counters, what they do in every single business, mate? They slash and burn, don't they?
Yeah. Look, it's so difficult to even get to an Olympics, to get the opportunity to participate, that to represent internationally at the Commonwealth Games is the level, as you say, that some athletes can reach. And it means the world to them and to their countries or regions. Like this guy won a medal, and I forget which sport it was, and he was from Guernsey. And so the Channel Islands get to represent them, the islands separately. So there's teams from Jersey and Guernsey. And this guy was the first one to win a medal from Guernsey in this particular sport. And like what that meant to him and to the island was, just, as you say, it's fantastic. I'm all for it continuing, but in these straitened times, and it does come down to money. And it's very unfortunate what happened in Victoria. And cynically, a few people have taken the view that Dan Andrews, as the Premier at the time, when he said, yes, we'll host it and we'll do it regionally and we'll build all these facilities around regional Victoria, then he changes his mind after an election where, that may have got him some votes to say we're going to do it there. You can take the view that he abused really that opportunity to host the Commonwealth Games, and that would be horrible to think that was the case, but plenty of people think it was. Anyway, down the track, look, I don't know what's going to happen. It's difficult to see it happening on time. They do have some money to assist, but with the joint bid between Queensland, or the joint consideration between Queensland and Western Australia, I thought was flawed. It's very difficult to do it on opposite sides of a big country. It would have been, it could have been held differently, and people have got to keep their minds open about how it can be done more cheaply and more reasonably and less spectacularly, I suppose. But look, I don't know what the answer is, but you can be sure the people at the Commonwealth Games Federation are losing a lot of sleep right now.
Finally then, when do we expect an answer to this? Because the sound of silence is deafening, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I don't have an answer, but if the answer doesn't come soon, it won't be in 3 years' time. They either skip a cycle, which would be disastrous, I think, for the brand, or they come up with a cheaper version somewhere. But who's going to put their hand up? If it's not Australia, I'd be putting pressure on England to host it again and go back to Birmingham and say please. But they've probably got good reasons, and I do still think it comes back to not just the existence of venues, but their availability. They get booked out, like major events, concerts, all sorts of things, and they're hard to move. They're contractually locked into agreements years in advance. So that's why you try and lock in a Commonwealth Games or an Olympic host 5 or 7 years out, because you've got to get the venue.
Devlin.
Words matter.
I was going to excuse me.